Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a brand new Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Grafaiai. Grafaiai evolves from Shroodle, which you can get through hatching 12-kilometer eggs. Grafaiai is a poison and normal type Pokemon. I believe that's the first time that we've seen this type combination in Pokemon Go. As for the moveset, it's off to a great start with Mud Slap as its fast move, and for charge moves it is Poison Fang and Sludge Bomb. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Grafaiai in action in some practice Great League battles. Hopping into the first match, picking up a tough lead, Shadow Feraligatr into Shadow Marowak. Shadow Marowak does cleanly win the 2-shield versus Feraligatr just by farming it all the way down, so I'm forced to switch out into my safe swap, which is Goodra. Now, you may notice I do have two very meta teammates with this Pokemon, and that is very intentional. In comes Moltres. Moltres is going to get the farm down. I bring in Feraligatr trying to get to the Hydro Cannon, but I cannot get there. I did get the one-turn bring-in on entry there, so unfortunately I don't get the CMP tie as they make it to the Brave Bird. Even though they're debuffed, I can still never farm down here, so I'm forced to fire off a move. They will get KO'd, and they are one off a move on the Marowak. They send in the Marowak. I'm forced to throw the Hydro Cannon here to either knock them out or pressure a shield. It's going to be a simultaneous switch, Grafaiai into Shadow Drapion, and look at the Mud Slaps go. The opponent getting absolutely deleted. Crunch nearly one-hit KOs Grafaiai, and I will fire off the Sludge Bomb. Maybe I could have gone for the Poison Fang, but I was worried that it would not knock out. But I think I see a win con. I can just Shadow Claw down, and then exit with the move. But the issue is, I actually think they're going to survive this on 1 HP, so it becomes a judgment call. I say they switch, and they do. They try and snipe. I get the prediction correct, and with that call, we're able to take the win by Shadow Clawing down the Drapion. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Shadow Feraligatr versus Azumarill. I'm definitely glad to see the Azumarill here and not up against the Goodra. Of course, I would probably prefer to have Grafaiai on it, but overall, Gator into Azu, I definitely prefer it to be the Feraligatr. I can survive a play rough here, but it does do quite a lot of damage, so I do decide to respect it with a shield. And now I can throw one Shadow Claw into the Hydro Cannon. We are going to both reach our next charge attacks on a charge attack priority tie, so I am actually going to go for it instantly here, anticipating that they'd throw right away, and my prediction is correct. That is huge, and now I'm just going to let this go, hard pivot Goodra and Dragon Breath down. But it's a simultaneous switch out. They send in Shadow Drapion, I bring in Goodra. Man, that's an unfortunate simultaneous swap, as I definitely would have preferred to have Grafaiai here. I'm now going to go for the Thunder Punch, as it does do more damage overall. It gets them to 1 HP, and the Dragon Breath registers, denying their charge attack. In the back is Annihilape. Annihilape unable to get the farm down before I'm able to get the Aqua Tail. The Aqua Tail is going to be no-shielded, and now it's up to Grafaiai to try and do the impossible. Grafaiai is super glassy, so I am going to be shielding even though it is a double-resisted Rage Fist, and now I will go for the Poison Fang. I don't think even with the debuff I can Mud Slap down, so I try for the catch. There's a simultaneous switch out, Azumarill into Feraligatr, but I make the Hydro Cannon, and that wins me the game. Because now, they're forced to throw or the Shadow Claw would KO, and Grafaiai should be able to live one boosted counter from Annihilape and get the Mud Slap down. We move to the next match, Shadow Feraligatr versus Malamar. This is a pretty solid matchup overall for Feraligatr. One Hydro Cannon does not KO, but one move from the Malamar does not KO either. My opponent starts off with an early shield, and since they shielded, I'm more than happy to shield back. These Psywaves do add up quite a bit, and I am just going to under-tap the Hydro Cannon here. Hydro Cannon into the Malamar, they actually double shield, and now I have a tough call to make. Do I protect the Feraligatr or do I save shields for my mons in the back? I decide to let Feraligatr go. Grafaiai is pretty glassy, so I think it's probably going to need shields. In comes a Gastrodon Pivot. That is a wild Pokemon to aggressively save swap into, but unfortunately I don't have a punish. There I did accidentally play to a CMP tie. I'm expecting them to full send the Earth Power, so I will commit the shield. Now here, I am going to overfarm and intentionally play to the CMB tie this time, so I can pick up the knockout and leave with as much residual energy as I possibly can. So the opponent, they could just bring back in the Malamar and throw it, and that's exactly what they're going to do. That tells me highly likely that Goodra has some play in the back. In comes Grafaiai. They're going to switch, and their final Pokemon is Clodsire. And here's where if Grafaiai had like a ground type charge move, that'd be very cool. But mono poison charge attacks is just very unfortunate to work with. So Grafaiai gets one hit KO'd with an Earthquake, and that's game over. Bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Feraligatr against Diggersby. Now Diggersby, Feraligatr does win the 0 shield against, but the more shields that are in play, the better it is for the Diggersby because Feraligatr can never farm down. So my goal here is just to play the 0 shield. They go Scorching Sands, that's very okay. I go for the Hydro Cannon, they switch into Malamar to absorb that energy. Malamar takes big damage, I can bring in Goodra, and for Goodra, my plan here is I'm just going to shield and farm down. I do exit with quite a lot of energy, and this energy can threaten just about anything they decide to bring in. They bring in the Diggersby, and I make an intentional choice. I'm not throwing the energy here because they're still switch locked. Instead, I'm saying that I think that my Goodra energy will be good in the back, and it is, as there's Toxapex as the final Pokemon. Toxapex gets hit with a Thunder Punch, and now I can just send in Grafaiai, and Grafaiai just gets to fully Mud Slap the opponent down, and now we get to debuff them with a Poison Fang. They will commit the shield. Mud Slap now doing extra damage. Opponent is going to go for the Sludge Wave. It's resisted, but it does do more damage than Brine. Grafaiai is going to get the full farm down of Toxapex to secure the win. Picking up a pretty okay lead in the next match, Shadow Feraligatr versus Dugong. Despite the fact that Shadow Feraligatr is generally favored here, in the zeros it actually does get quite uncomfortable because if they have a good Dugong, all the Shadow Claws plus 2 Hydro Cannons will not be enough to knock out. So my plan here is I'm not going to play the zeros. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shield once, as it's unlikely that the first move they throw is going to be the Icy Wind, tank one, and then look to leave with a bunch of residual energy. So now I'm pretty close to an Ice Beam if I need it, and I do have the Hydro Cannon loaded. They bring in Annihilate, and I immediately make a mistake. I should have Hydroed instantly and then immediately pivoted to Goodra. Now, unfortunately, I won't have Feraligatr available for a catch later on, and Annihilate, when it gets ramped up, will be quite scary. Annihilate is going to go for the Rage Fist. I make it to the Aqua Tail. I'm hoping they decide to let it go, but a ramped up Annihilate, people do love to shield it. Annihilate throws at the last second, worried about me making another move. I believe they would have gotten that farm down, and now I have to try and farm with Grafaiai, but look at these counters. I've lost 3/4 of my health. In the back is Steelix, and another situation where if Grafaiai had any kind of coverage moves, a ground charge attack, it could actually be kind of interesting, but it doesn't. It's stuck with only poison moves, so Grafaiai is left helplessly throwing poison moves at a Steelix, as Steelix is able to take the win. Bad lead in the next match, leading into Superior. I save switch to Goodra, and my opponent is going to respond with Licky Licky. Licky Licky will go for a Body Slam, that's very okay. And now I'm just going to start spamming out moves with the Goodra. Nothing I throw here is going to be doing a ton of damage to the Licky Licky. Licky Licky, I'm now going to go for a Thunder Punch. Again, it does slightly more damage than Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail, I believe, is still barely more efficient, but in this instance, I knew I was only going to get to 2 moves, so I figured I may as well try for as much damage as I could get. And now I'm going to bring in Shadow Feraligatr, and I'm going to go for an incredibly aggressive farm down. Shadow Claw is double resisted, but my thought process here is if I can leave with an Ice Beam, that can threaten a shield off Superior, and then I have to try and trust in Grafaiai to sweep an endgame, which is, at this point of the video, not something I am particularly confident in, but they have a Toxapex in the back. I throw Hydro, I bring in Grafaiai, they end up staying in for a while before switching, and that gives Grafaiai a pretty nice energy advantage. They banked energy on Superior before switching, and this is going to allow Grafaiai to catch back up. Going for the Poison Fang, Superior does end up committing the shield. They do, unfortunately, throw on Alignment, which is going to give me a free Mud Slap. Granted, that doesn't do a lot in terms of damage, but I'll take any extra energy that I can get. So, I go for the Poison Fang, they let it go, it KOs, and back in comes Toxapex. I think my win con here is them not knowing that I have mono poison moves. So, I am going to go for a Poison Fang, If they shield, I think I can make a Hydro on Feraligatr. And they do. I send in Feraligatr, I get the Hydro Cannon, and this game will end in a win. In this instance, entirely just because this is a new Pokemon and people don't know what it has. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Feraligatr versus Azumarill. Azumarill, of course, very slow to get the charge moves, but very, very bulky, whereas Feraligatr is a lot glassier, but gets to these charge moves in lightning fast pacing. I'm going to shield up the first Play Rough as I did previously. Play Rough, of course, not going to be lethal, but would just do a ton of damage, and they are now at Play Rough number 2. The previous opponent did end up throwing on alignment. This time, I predict that they won't, and I do get the prediction correct. So I go for the Hydro, they shield, and I have a choice to make. Last time I no-shielded and I won, so I'm going to let this through. Play Rough will do a ton of damage. I get sniped with Annihilate, and immediately upon seeing Annihilate, I know that I have made a misplay and I should have shielded Feraligatr. I'm going to no-shield. This isn't enough for a close combat, but it is enough for an Ice Punch, and Ice Punch does massive damage to Goodra. Aqua Tail is going to be shielded. I'm forced to bring in Grafaiai. Grafaiai will take some pretty substantial damage from Ice Punch, so I'm forced to burn the shield. Unfortunately, they end up Rage Fisting, switching out, and it's Galarian Corsola in the back, and this game is just over. Again, another situation where if it had anything other than mono poison moves, maybe there'd be a chance. They're debuffed by the Poison Fang, which means the Sludge Bomb will actually do a lot. Maybe if they try and farm down, but they don't. Had they thrown one more Astonish, it could have cap-tied them and potentially won the game, but it's not to be. Galarian Corsola, too bulky. That's going to be able to KO my Goodra, and that's a good game. All right, we get a great lead in the next match, Shadow Feraligatr versus Shadow Quagsire. Shadow Feraligatr is so dominant in this matchup. In the zeros, the Hydro Cannon does not knock out, but once more shields are in play, you can Shadow Claw into Hydro range, and they can just never catch up by baiting. They will go for an Aqua Tail bait. That's very okay by me. I'm going to look to farm up. Opponent is going to switch into Malamar, and honestly, that's fine. I want damage on the Malamar, so I am very happy throwing the charge attack. I'm going to rebank a move for later and send in Goodra to absorb this energy. Goodra can tank a superpower that does do quite a bit of damage. The visuals there were very weird. It looked like I paused and then suddenly I caught back up. Not quite sure what happened there. Maybe my internet went out for a little bit. Back in comes the Quagsire. I do get the Aqua Tail. This does not KO, but it's going to get them very, very low, which is exactly what I'm hoping for. In the back, oh no, trainer, I am so sorry. There's a Shadow Drapion. And that's like the one thing Grafaiai can beat. Grafaiai, of course, resisting the poison stings. I do barely survive a crunch, as we've learned. And now I just get to mud slap down the remainder of their team and take the win. A familiar lead and a bad lead in the next match. Feraligatr into Superior. I'm going to safe switch into the Goodra, and my opponent is staying in with the Superior and throwing their energy. Frenzy Plant is going to connect. They're going to send in Steelix, and Steelix, I mean, I get in for super effective damage with the Aqua Tails, but Steelix can potentially threaten with Breaking Swipes. Breaking Swipe, I think, would actually KO, so I shield, and I shield a Psychic Fangs. Oh, that is so unfortunate. Here, I do get the double up on Aqua Tails, which is very, very nice, as I believe Aqua Tail does have an eventual 11 cycle. My opponent realizes that I'm doubled up, and they decide to just fully let it through. Now they bring back in Superior. I farm up, I go for the Aqua Tail. I'm able to get a shield, so my opponent respecting a potential nuke move. Of course, I'm not running it on this particular Goodra, but I do have a Draco Meteor Goodra built. And now I send in Grafaiai, and I have a very tough call to make, because they're going to make it to a second move before I can get to my Poison Fang. Do I save the shield for Feraligatr? I decide no. I'm going down with the ship with Grafaiai. In the back is Stunfisk. And unfortunately, this is just a loss because I only have poison moves. But this is another game where I get completely bailed out by this being a new Pokemon and people not knowing what it has. So they shield, expecting, okay, it is Mud Slap. Surely it has a ground charge move. But unfortunately, it has mono poison moves, so that's a game that I definitely should have lost, but I do end up winning purely based on the surprise factor. Alright, hopping into what I believe is the final match, Shadow Feraligatr into Mew. There's a Drapion safe switch, and I get to respond once again with Grafaiai. Grafaiai, this is a regular Drapion, so I am gonna no shield, and Crunch still puts me deep into the red health. I'll go for the Sludge Bomb here. It does do more damage. Both are resisted. They shield, and I'm immediately sad that I didn't Acid Spray. If I Acid Sprayed, then I could have just matched shields and farmed down, but since I didn't, instead, I'm just going to go for farm on Goodra. Goodra, here, I actually miscounted. I thought they were short, but it turns out they did actually have the crunch. They aggressively pivot into the Mew, and now I'm going to respond with Feraligatr, and Feraligatr does get to the Hydro Cannon. This will knock out if they let it through. They do end up letting it go, saving their final shield for their Primeape. Primeape will have a pacing advantage, but down a shield, this is not looking good for my opponent. As long as I force the final shield from them, I should be good to save my final shield for Goodra, and Goodra should be able to sweep this game. They will go for the Rage Fist, I can let this go, and now I'm just going to keep farming. At some point, they're going to go for the catch, there it is, and once they fail the catch, it's just a one game for me. I'll go for the Thunder Punch as it will do slightly more damage. Thunder Punch connects, we get the Dragon Breath down, and we're able to take the win. And now some final thoughts on Grafaiai. I do think that the combination of ground and poison is very interesting in the current Open Great League meta. However, I think there's a Pokemon already out there that just does what this wants to do better, and that is Shadow Kanto Grimer. Shadow Kanto Grimer has very similar coverage, Mud Slap Sludge Bomb, but the important distinction is it has Mud Bomb. So it actually has a charge attack that's able to provide nice coverage. So in those situations, like if you end up against something like a Unova Stunfisk or a Steelix, you actually have a move that can damage them, because Poison is not the greatest typing offensively. Defensively, it can provide some interesting resistances, but offensively, it ends up being walled by a lot. So I do think that Grafaiai, it's a Pokemon that you can grab for your Pokedex, but at the current moment, it's not a Pokemon that I would recommend building for the Open Great League or even for limited metas. It's definitely worth trying to get your hands on one, because if you're able to hatch one, of course, you'll have it for the Dex, and maybe it'll get a move update in the future. But for right now, I think everything it wants to do, Shadow Kanto Grimer just does better. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys, oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.